to Found with Trish and Sherri. We have a special guest today. And after years of swapping experiences and stories, we're ready to let you in on the conversation.
And today's story is a powerful one about family, timing, and the connections that DNA can uncover when we least expect it. And please welcome our guest, Laura, who was living life as usual when a message from a stranger changed everything. And that message came from a sister she never knew even existed. And then after nearly 50 years apart, these two lovely women on screen right now finally found each other, thanks to a DNA test and a lot of courage on both their parts. So Laura, welcome to the show. We are happy you are here.
Welcome. Hi. Thank you. Thank you. I'm glad to be here. It's been a long 4.5 years.
Yes, it has. And just to start at the beginning, tell us a little bit about your background, where you grew up, what your family looked like before all of this unfolded.
So I grew up a pretty typical, I want to say, nuclear family. Father, mother, married for years, one older sister, 2 years older. Then I came along second, and that was it. We spent a lot of time growing up, they have a farm. So my father was a school teacher by trade, and then he was a farmer by hobby, because the farm, you know how farming is. Farming doesn't really support a family. So my mom worked from home, but pretty much stayed home as a homemaker. Did some little side businesses to bring in money when that was necessary, but pretty much stayed home with us girls. And then he was a school teacher. And then on these summers, he would run the farm basically as his hobby. I'm not sure if he ever planned on quitting school teaching and just being a farmer 100%, but that is what he decided back in his college days when he first married my mother. So very churchy, our entire community was pretty much revolved around a church family, and a lot of have responsibility to that, I guess. It was expected you're there at least once a week, if not more. And that's pretty much how it went.
And you have a sister, correct?
Yes, I have a sister that's 2 years older, born in 1979. I was born in 1981. And the story from my mother is that they never planned on having children. She made sure that I knew this.
Oh.
Yeah, never planned on having kids. And then after 7 years of being married, said to my father, "Isn't it kind of quiet around here?" And then that led them to the discussion about having kids. He also made sure to let us know that he was really expecting boys. He coached football, and he would have loved to have a son.
Whoops. So Laura, you and I came at this from different angles.
Mm-hmm.
On my side, I had found, or I'd had a DNA detective, help me find our father, our common father. And for the year, I think the first year, we just emailed back and forth. I've never spoken with him in person. I've never met him in person. And I don't expect either one of those things to happen at this point. But I pulled the book out before the book that Trish and I wrote Found, and was reading through, because it's been years now. But it was basically a year to a year and a half that I was emailing back and forth with him, getting information. And every time he would email, he would just say, "At no point will you ever contact my daughters," and quote, "the wheels will come off of this whole thing," unquote. And so after I really hadn't heard from him in months, and Trish and I would be in the car having these conversations, do you contact them anyway? She's in a situation, even today, where Trish has a biological brother, and per her birth mother's wishes, she's never contacted him. And I was always of the mind that, of course, I would contact, any siblings. Yeah. And so I sent a message.
For quite a long time.
We did. Well, because I didn't want to ruin the relationship, but at this point,
relationship?
There was no relationship.
What relationship? Yeah.
I had gotten your Facebook and our sister's Facebook, and I sent you both the same message. And I sent, "Hello, my name is Mary Craig Evans. We share a biological father, which makes us half sisters. He was in a relationship with my biological mother when he was stationed here where I live in the late 1960s. I was given up for adoption at birth and found both of my biological parents in 2017. I understand that he told you and your sister about me years ago. Now, I didn't actually know if this was true or not because,
Oh,
yeah, I mean, he implied that he had, but there was no confirmation, there was no response, there was no information on how I could get in touch with you. And then I finished with, I wanted to reach out and let you know how to get in contact with me. And I sent those as two separate messenger messages. And immediately you replied. I've never heard from our sister at this point except the conversations you and I have had. And immediately you replied and you said, "Yes, we need to talk on the phone sometime soon. I had asked Dad for your contact information and he never gave it to me. I didn't really push very hard after that due to my mother's reaction to the situation. I'll explain more when we speak on the phone. I'm so glad you reached out. I couldn't even get a last name out of him when I asked. Did you find my sister's information? You're asking about our mutual sister, and you said she just got married at the beginning of October. So let's hear that from your perspective then. So how
so
how was it revealed to you that I existed?
So when I got that message, I was at work. I work in a hospital, and I saw it, and it was one of those like I totally remember the feeling. You know how you may not remember what was going on, but you remember how you felt.
Yes.
So it was one of those moments where I saw it, and I was like, "Oh, okay." Kind of out of the blue, but not unknown at that point. Like it was not shocking to me because of something that had happened a couple of years earlier by then. Um, so that's why I was like, oh, hallelujah, because I knew that I wasn't going to figure out how to find you. So I was glad to see that in my inbox and leaving it open. Like on the internet, you can respond or you don't have to respond.
Mm-hmm.
So it is just putting that out in your ballpark. Hey, this could be true. Talk to me. And yes.
Yes.
And yes. So
Now there had been a family gathering, or he had implied he had done
there
something.
there had been these stealthy phone calls, which is how we've always conducted like the nuclear family business, where I lived about 2 hours away from them and my sister lived 2 hours away from them. And it was like a triangle. And um, a few years before we found out that you existed, both of my parents had different kinds of health issues. And um, they were not telling me about the health issues, but they were telling my older sister. So the reason they chose to keep this is the secrecy thing is crazy. It runs very deep, and as my husband puts it, very stupid secrets. Like these are divisive secrets. These are not secrets that are helping anybody, and they're not as inflammatory as you think they are. So it seems like the point of these secrets is simply to protect one's own ego or the face that you're projecting forwards, the way that you're perceived by everyone else. Like, heaven forbid we admit that we're human or that we make mistakes or have connections that even could be incredibly beneficial or healing or helpful for other members of the family. The point is, I did something and I don't want you to see me that way. Personally, I think that doesn't change that it happened. It still happened.
Right.
I don't care how old you were or whatever. And I also don't understand the superiority complex of not admitting your mistakes. But that has definitely been the secrecy and not admitting your mistakes for ego reasons has been a hallmark of the way I was raised. It's just very frustrating.
Do you think that's more personality or the time in which they came up?
I think there's a bunch of things going on. There's family dynamics from the father that my father had There's my father describes himself as a wild child when he was in the military and stuff, and drinking and everything. And then when he met my mother, who is she calls herself a goody two shoes, but I find it that she's just less, she just never does anything that would explore anything. Like, she always does what's expected of her, and she always like plods along. So she met him, and their relationship, they're 3 years difference in age, and their relationship was such that she started taking him to church because her family went to church, but they went to church on holidays. They weren't regular church goers. She was just trying to set the foundation in place for her future, which was to be with a man that has scruples, and to not to create a family, just to be in a, to start getting the earthly situation set. It's interesting that she forced him to go to church because he's the one that went off the deep end with the church. It became such an identity, and they're evangelical Baptists. Mm-hmm. It became such an identity and something that he was going to fight for.
Do you think that kind of childhood affected how you saw it when Sherri did approach you?
Yes. Yeah. I think that the bulk of the hiding Sherri's existence occurred because he found out about her creation during his wild child phase, before he became a deacon in the church and subscribed dozens of years, decades of his life in service to the church, and mm-hmm. trying to make sure that everything was on the up and up. So what that felt like growing up was a lot of, oh, look at their teens and what their teens are doing. You girls would never do that. You're not raised that way. A lot of judgmental conversations.
That must have been shocking to hear she existed.
What's that?
Must have been shocking to hear she existed.
Yes.
That was your view of your dad.
To have someone steamroll a certain picture of themselves into your mind for your entire existence, and then find out, like, when was I? In my late 30s? To find out in my late 30s, when I had a child of my own, and a marriage and a house and 2 cars and a job, all the things, to find out at that point that what I was told was simply lip service.
Right.
And that, I just wonder, because if I had known about you all the time growing up, had some kind of relationship with you, first off, knowing you now,
right?
You have 4 kids. I never got to see any of them born. I never got to be excited when you found out you were pregnant. I never got to be there with you through. I've just been robbed. Yeah. Like through the hardships that you've had with your divorce and your 4th child and all the challenges you've had there. Like, I didn't get any of that. I found you when your youngest was 17.
Yeah. Teenager.
Yeah. Yeah. And all the pieces had kind of fallen in place at that point.
Right.
So for me, I grew up with a sister. She's married, divorced, and married again. No kids. I have the only child. And it sucks. I would I didn't have any cousins growing up. My mother has a brother that didn't have any children, a lot of mental illness. It was, he had his challenges, but thank goodness he knew enough about himself that he didn't go out and make a bunch of kids in the situation he was in. And then over the years, the really not entertaining, very difficult dog and pony show of our family was not my dad's side. My dad's side was the boring side. My mom's side was the side that had all the drama, all the things going on. And my mom's always been the historian of the family. So anything we knew about from dad's side came from these short little vignettes of things that she must have pulled out of him while they were dating and first married, when they used to talk. Mm-hmm. And that was boring. Like the things that you would color my father's side of the family were judgmental, critical, negative, some unpleasant behaviors. Like I had a stoic grandmother who just didn't speak, really didn't smile. We saw her 4 times a year. We went to her nursing home, but that was it. We took, we would go to her house, take her out to lunch for Mother's Day, and that was it. And then my grandfather, it was never hidden with him that he was a serial monogamist. So I want to say he was with 4 different women. He married every woman. And what my father said was that he lined up. He was with one, and then he would chat up another one and line up a place to land. And then he'd go there, they'd get married. That woman would be tricked for a short period of time into them having a relationship, and then he would go on to the next one. So that's
Crazy.
Sherri and I have talked about this extensively because this was something I don't think my father ever shared with her. That is part of the family DNA of choices that someone made in the Great Depression, still affecting us today, 100 years later.
Yes.
100 years later, and we're still dealing.
And we have found that in a lot of people we've talked to, and including ourselves, is it is watching that generational trauma. Now, a lot of times it looks different from generation to generation, but there's definitely a roll down that is fascinating.
It's crazy. It's if you ever stop and you think you don't matter because you didn't leave some legacy behind, you are wrong.
Right.
The way you lived your life, how you interacted with people, in the very least part, it's the people that you leave behind. But my grandfather, he made it into his late 80s, early 90s, as did most of my grandparents. And, whatever. We visited him in Florida, miserable family vacations, to go down and see him. And I remember, at least in middle school, it was explained to me that he let his 3rd wife, who raised my father through his teenhood, he let her do horrible things to him. And he stood by, the biological parent stood by and let the stepmom lock him in closets and refuse to feed him and this and that and the other thing if he didn't do what she wanted him to do. So she was an awful person. And she was also one of the longest length marriages that my grandfather had. So neither here nor there.
One of the things that our biological father would email to me, that he alluded to this thing where he wasn't his father, that your mother is not that wife, and that I'm not the daughter. And I could not, for the life of me, figure out what he was talking about. So there's this wild story, Laura, I'm going to let you tell it, about.
So,
yes.
So we can name names a little bit. They're slightly altered because there's actually multiple names for almost every person, because everybody's got these things that they went by in their actual real name.
Right.
So my father's father, Ernest, this story and how it all tracks back to the Great Depression is that he grew up in Utica, New York. So when he was growing up, his family had a store, and him and his brother worked at the store. And he was 19. He was 19, and he met a woman, a local woman, as one does. And her name was Vivian. Vivian was 17 or 18, and Ernest was 19, 20. Mm-hmm. The two of them got married, and they were struggling, and it was right as the Great Depression hit. So what they had is they had 2 children. They had a boy and a girl. The girl was older, and the boy came soon after. And the girl is my Aunt Jane. So this is a half sibling that came out of the woodwork when I was in middle school. My father's half sibling.
Oh. So you've been through this before kind of already.
Like 4 times.
Wow.
Like everybody needs to keep their pants on. At least the men in the family, like, thank God. So he met this young woman, and they right out the gate, they have Jane and they have this boy, which everyone just called Buddy. They worked in the household of a rich, I'm not sure how rich, honestly, like, but how it was told to me, like an affluent family. He was the chauffeur and kind of a butler, and she was hired on as a maid. They were in the house, and there appeared to be some kind of jealousy that started where Vivian thought that the lady of the house was coming on to her young husband. There was some kind of a jealousy there. You know, it's, who knows? Who knows
Right.
what actually happened? But it started a series of events that led to a fissure between Vivian and the family. Like, Vivian was not getting along with the family. She did not want to be the maid anymore. Now she had these 2 young children, and they were living on the property. They didn't really have another place to go. So while she was cleaning or doing her duties, the lady of the house would, this is bizarre, Sherri, this is bizarre. The lady of the house would, who did not have children of her own, from my understanding, probably couldn't have children, would babysit and take care of the 2 little kids, and had grown very, very attached to my Aunt Jane as this little adorable child. You know, debatable now that I've met Jane, but so Ernest and Vivian start fighting, looking like they're going to break up. He's either jealous of her and the man of the house, or she's jealous of him and the woman of the house. And meanwhile, the lady loves their child and wants to keep their child and sees them struggling. Well, somehow, and explain to me, like, I don't know. I have to go dig around with my mom to figure out how this doesn't even make sense to me. But somehow they decided that they were going to break up. They were going to separate. But because Vivian was this 17, 18, 19-year-old girl with 2 children to take care of and no husband, which was probably poo-pooed in the Great Depression, we're going to make it easier for you, and I'll just adopt your daughter. She can live here. Look at all this stuff I have. I'm going to give her a great life. And Vivian's like, fine. Yeah, take her. Now, the woman of the house was not interested in the boy. For whatever it was not interested in adopting the boy. So he was literally, he was left in a house. Like, he didn't go to family. He went to an orphanage. So,
and this is all family you didn't know about until you were older.
Yes. So this was kind of thing. My dad came in and dumped it on her lap and said, this woman found me. Turns out that she's the child of your grandfather from before he married your grandmother. So, okay. So that was his first relationship. Produced these 2 children, which were given up. Now, Jane went on to be raised and have a very strong relationship with her birth mom, and didn't think that there was anything suspect about this whole thing. So if it would be interesting to hear what she was told, like what the family story was. Maybe they were just too young. They were breaking up and they didn't want to raise kids. Right. So they were looking for anybody to take the kids. That could have been.
That was the Depression. That may have had a factor in it as well.
Yeah, they may not have. Yeah. Yep. Might have lined up. I know that the family store that they had for several generations, they lost it during that time. And that's what led to my grandfather going to work for this well-off people.
Right. So then they break up.
Yep.
The children are in their different places.
Children are out of the picture.
Mm-hmm. And he goes on to marry.
Oh, it's more complicated than that.
Okay.
He knows a local woman in town from a large German farm family, very stoic people,
Mm-hmm.
all girls. And the eldest of the girls is my grandmother, which when I first saw you, there are so many facial features that look like my paternal grandmother.
Mm-hmm.
So there's Sherri. That's where she came through. But my paternal grandmother, Elma, she was engaged to be married. And then on the day, she must have known my grandfather just from around town or something. But she went to get married and on the day got left at the altar. Yeah. And that's all that was ever told to me, is that she was brokenhearted, left at the altar. And then he stepped in as sort of the rebound relationship to heal her, fix her, etc. Honestly, and then they would have two sons, my father first, and then shortly afterwards, my uncle David, and then would immediately break up, like when they were 4 and 6 or something. And this is one of those things where if you ever revisit the plot of The Parent Trap, it is so bizarre that the couple would divorce, split up their twins, and not tell them that they have a sibling and or a parent, and that the kids find each other at a summer camp.
Right.
But this is how, custody situations and the way we understand things now, this is how they did it in the, God, what would that be? The
40s?
the 50s, I think.
Okay.
Yeah, late 50s probably. So
back in the 1900s.
So the two of them broke up, and he had this third woman set up. And this third woman was in Texas. I don't know how he
takes the oldest son.
Yeah.
She takes the younger son.
The oldest son with him to Texas with this new woman who she has 2 daughters. And this is the abusive relationship I mentioned earlier.
Right.
Locks him in the closet, doesn't feed him if he doesn't come right back home from school. So he wanted to play football. And if he went to football practice, he didn't get dinner. So, so he said that, like, she would lock up the cabinet's refrigerator and stuff. She would throw his food out and everything else. And then she would get very upset if he went and raided food after he got home. So there was this whole thing, kind of sad thing, about how his dad would sneak into his bedroom, wake him up, and bring him downstairs so he could have some cereal. But it had to be after she fell asleep.
Wow.
He wasn't going to learn his lesson if he didn't starve him. So, so this woman, Evelyn, she had 2 daughters that were pretty much almost out the door. They must have been high schoolers when my father was in elementary school. And he spent the majority of his formative years with this abusive woman and his father in Texas. And the younger son was left with my paternal grandmother, Alma, in Utica. And that son he rode a motorcycle, he joined the armed forces, he ran all around. He at some point went out to California and became an extra in a bunch of movies. Like, he would just walk onto the movie set. He married and at least created a child with, if not married, a very beautiful either actress or model or something out there, which I do have this random cousin, but I haven't been able to figure out where he is.
I've reached out to him on Ancestry and I have not had a reply.
Yeah. So I'm very curious about what his situation was, given that from our very quote unquote normal nuclear family, we always looked at David's life as this cautionary tale. Don't do this, don't do that. And you wonder about the relationship, right, between the 2 brothers, or the relationship from this one to that one. There's a joke that on my father's side, they tend to scatter to the wind to get as much geographical space between them as possible. There's not a lot of us, but we do not talk to the others because I don't know what that is. That's a lack of support, that brokenness. But it's interesting that, the sister I grew up with, we're very close. Like, we can let a month go by where we don't talk. But the internet makes it a little easier. She knows where I am. I know where she is. We check in, we do things together. And my father and uncle not growing up together, they don't. When they do get together, it's a fight. And then what happened was,
this is the wild part.
Yes, this is the wild part. So Aunt Jane came out of the woodwork, and she was from the first wife that they divorced when they were babies.
she had been raised.
We're going to need a chart here, ladies.
Yeah.
Right.
All these choices.
So Jane, our aunt, comes out of the woodwork,
and she has found her mother through the woman who adopted her, which I believe that wealthy woman was always open about it, never hid it. She reconnects with her mother. In the process of reconnecting with her father, my grandfather, she gets the two of them to meet. Well, guess what? He's done with the one in Texas. The kids are out of the house. The relationship has lost its luster. She's gained a ton of weight. And he decides he's going to move to Florida and he's going to get back with his first wife. So that's what he does. And the two of them lived in this sad white condo in Florida that Jane set them up with.
And their daughter takes care of them, right?
Yeah, she was very needy, and her adoption situation, she was just over the moon to find her parents, and over the moon that her parents were nice, and everything that she talked about it was like it was a dream come true. Which I feel like is very
telling,
very weird.
Yeah,
very weird.
Very because, telling of where
she
her
had,
mindset was.
Yeah, very, very weird that all she wanted was to like subscribing to the idea that the people you come from are clones of them or something. Like, I look at my parents and I'm like, all right. I do not feel like my mom junior or my dad junior. Like, I feel like my own entity. Like, I believe that they were there and they raised me and helped shape me initially, but then your environment, your peers, your education, your choices take you to where you're going to be as an adult.
Yet you're so very much like Sherri.
This I don't get. Maybe it's a generational thing. Maybe it's
I don't know. But boy, the first time I met you and our families all got together because you'd come to Florida and we met in St. Augustine for dinner. The three of us sitting there, it's like the rest of the world just stopped for a while and we got to talking. And I'm like, Sherri, she's one of us. I mean, she's literally just, slides right in. Just, it was like I've known you forever.
Yeah, whatever that is, like, sometimes you just meet people and you're like, this is the one. This is the one I'm going to spend time with. We were incredibly fortunate. Like, that doesn't happen frequently for me anyway. Like, I meet a lot of people. I work with 80 some people a day. I meet a lot of people, and I only have like that kind of immediate chemistry with maybe 15 people in my whole life. And, you think about you don't realize how many thousands and thousands of people you interact with. And, a few sentences back and forth, a few shared interests, and you pretty much have a pretty good bead on, is it there or is it not there?
Right.
Yeah.
And I so desperately, you're my only connection to my paternal side. And I met you. We talked. The first thing we did, because we're so far apart from each other, was we did like a Zoom call thing. And you made some references about the paternal grandmother. And we talked. And I think Laura has said since then that it was more like finding an aunt than it was like a sister.
It's
because
still, I can't comprehend. Like, I can't wrap
Mhm.
my head around it because of, I guess, just how we subscribe to what family is, and that
Right.
you didn't grow up in my household. Like, you still feel like an aunt.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
I think we figured out we're 11 years apart.
It's a
I don't
lot.
know. And I say sister, and I mean sister, but rationally, because you were not in my house,
Mm-hmm.
you know,
There's not a history.
I don't have a, yeah,
Right.
you have to
And
build that
so
now.
the day when I sent you the Facebook message, I was at lunch with some team members, and I was just beating myself up about this rejection I'm about to receive and how horrible it's going to be, and
You
how
don't know.
well, that's where my go-to is. And I got to the point where I said, there's no history here. And by the time I found you, I had already found on my mother's side, all of those siblings. And so I didn't have unrealistic expectations. I felt like I was, pretty experienced at this point. But you're my only paternal connection. And you answered so many questions. I could not figure out where our dad was coming from in his emails.
He's peculiar.
He's peculiar. And he kept saying, I'm not Ernest, and your mother, Mary's not Vivian, and Sherri, you're not Jane. And I had no idea what he was talking about.
What the hell are you talking about? The context, my
Yes,
friend.
there was
And
no context.
it all goes back to, unfortunately, there's been a closed door between you and this father's line of family members, that you come from a long line of main characters.
That's it.
Like, you're
On
just
both
walking
sides.
through their movie.
Yes. On
Like,
both sides. Yes.
like, I don't know, you really have to fight for identity in this family, I feel like.
Mhm.
There's a lot of stubbornness and willful thinking and ego.
But
Yeah.
the other thing you really answered, though, was, again, Trish and I riding in the car every afternoon, going to pick up our daughters. And we were just stumped when it was only me emailing with him. Why was your mother so upset about the fact her husband had had sex as a teenager? Like, why this big
Because the
secrecy?
woman has
Why?
not lived life.
Well, but
And
at
the
the same
woman is
time,
pissed
he
that
had
she
never
has not.
told her.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. That's
He
a
had
big
never
part.
told her. And when he starts to get these emails from me,
Oh, my
he
God.
sneaks off, right?
Comedy of errors. Yeah.
And she
So
thinks the worst. So when you see, I never would have known any of this. And Trish and I sitting in the car wondering, what's up with her? Why can't
there's so
she
many
accept it?
things.
Right.
So many
And
things.
so when I met you, it was like just clicking into place some of these things that made so much sense.
And like
These,
I said to you, I said, these two people would have been perfectly adequate parents to you, but you didn't miss anything, and you're not missing anything. Not having a relationship. It's terrible, but it is 100% true.
Yeah. Now, I have not met our shared sister. And
no, she's wonderful.
Does she know that you guys talk and are close?
Yes.
Okay.
And I've asked her, and she's just like overwhelmed by it. I said, we don't have a lot of quality people or personalities in our family. And I said, anybody that we can get that seems normal would really help dilute all of this.
I'm normal.
Never mind.
Never mind.
Normal.
Just like, oh my God. Just so much. And
and I hear you saying she's very overwhelmed with
she's
taking care of your parents.
You know how Charlie Brown like sighs and is just like, oh, typical. That is pretty much baseline, my older sister. Like, stuff's happening to her. She's a leader. She's a good decision maker. She's got this underlying anxiety that she's doing her best to suppress. And she's chugging along, and she's doing the work, and she's taking the hits, and honestly needs to ask for help. But that hasn't ever been something that's been supported in the family. Like, you don't ask for help. You know why you don't ask for help? Because you're not going to get it. So I do the same thing. Same thing.
But adding another unknown person, especially considering how close she lives to them, would
No,
just
it's what she's doing is avoiding the harassment from my father.
right.
He said, "Daddy's girl," I would take a giant offense to that. Like, that is not how it is at all. Like, she's not wearing
We haven't
blinders.
said that here yet.
Okay.
So in his emails to me, our biological dad said he was just trying to describe to me what my sisters were like. And he said, one is a total daddy's girl and is not going to want to meet you. And the other always wanted a big family and is going to be
True.
thrilled that you exist.
True, because I was very, very excited to have Jane come into our lives.
Yeah.
And the way I responded, I think it was just a perfect time for me because I was bored with the home life. I was bored with the control, trapped in a tiny town where I had no decision-making powers of my own. Like, I spent a lot of my childhood reading books and being by myself. Like, my older sister and I, we would go out and run around outside, but we were oil and water.
It is wild to me, just reflectively, to think I'm 10 when your older sister's born, when she was born. And then I'm 12 when you were born. And I sit and I try to think of myself at 10 and 12, and I think, what was I doing? Ironically, I have two sets of children, two from the first marriage, two from the second marriage. And they are 10 and 12 years apart, just like you and I and our sister would have been. But I think, Sherri, where were you at 10 and 12 in middle school? And I'm doing this, and I have siblings born in another state. Even though my parents took me home from the hospital as a newborn and gave me everything and loved me and cherished me. And I always had a sense of abandonment. And going into finding all of you, I had such a good experience with my birth mother, Carolyn, and her children and her husband, my stepdad. But like on you guys, on your side, all of those fears of abandonment and rejection and all of that, and you're the only one who stepped up. And
they, you can't get from them something they don't have.
Right.
And it never has been about you, the product. It could have been anybody. It sounds so bad. But because they don't know who you are, they don't know the way you think. All they could do is say, oh, well, here's a life that we can't do right now. Put it somewhere safe. And he says that he has always worried. He has always worried that you were okay. And that you were out there getting your needs met and being supported and loved by a family who wanted you. But never said anything at any point to the woman that he was dating, to the woman he had children with, to the woman that he continues to be married to. Right. And that kind of secrecy is completely asinine.
Right.
Because you're here. They never thought genealogy was going to come around. They never thought there'd be a DNA test.
We talk about that all the time.
They never thought the internet was going to blow up. They never saw any of this coming.
Right.
Yeah. So here it is.
But as far as building that relationship with that kind of family and background, what do you think made it easier or worse? What was the good and the bad of trying to build the relationship between the two of you, being strangers and not having family support? I mean, actively knowing that your family was not great on it.
So I have brought back information from Sherri and given it to my father and haven't, but like, shh, don't let your mother hear. Let's go out there by the garden and we can do a quick download, because he is curious, because he does want to know, but he's pretty much banned from any further involvement. This story is just ridiculous to me. But so he never says anything to this woman. He's saying, hey, I might have a kid out there. Hey, I had this girlfriend and I found out she was pregnant, and then I went and I worked in the military and I was going to marry her, but they told me I couldn't marry her. So then I came back and I checked, and my mother-in-law lied to me and said she was gone with the baby, And then I just gave up. I gave up and I never looked again because I was told no too many times. He said he checked 3 times. He tried to get in the door. And then at the 3rd time, he was like, okay, I'm going to leave it alone. And then life happened. So he never tells my mother. He has 2 kids. Never tells, never, never, never. You find him through DNA where you got connected to his mother's sister.
Mm-hmm.
And you're trying to figure out, hey, I have a general idea of a name. I have a general idea of an area. Who do you think it could be?
Mm-hmm.
And then eventually you get his email address.
For the business, for the farm.
Oh, okay.
Because Trish and I decided that was safe. I actually purchased a card that I debated about mailing, and then I ended up emailing the farm, not knowing who was going to open the email. So I was very.
I would think would be my mother. I would think it would be my mother.
It was not,
which is so weird because he doesn't do chores.
I don't know what to say.
He doesn't do chores, but for some reason you got a hold of him and not her.
Which was a good thing.
And he immediately, to his benefit, he did say, "I've always wondered where you were. I'm so happy to hear you're okay. Please tell me about yourself." Yeah.
Yes. And then how my mother described it was he was scurrying down to the computer every chance he had to check his email. Like they had like a Dell laptop in the corner of a garage that got turned into like a rumpus room. Because that's what you do.
Yeah. Right.
So he her about it by then, or did she think he was cheating on her?
That's exactly it. So he's scurrying to the computer all lit up, all
this
happy.
Makes a lot more sense.
And she sees him doing this and doesn't know what's going on, and he's not answering her. Well, guess what? You only keep that up so many times before eventually you don't close your browser. And somebody gets on there and clicks around trying to figure out what's going on because something's going on. So during this period of time, like I said, my mother has some mental health issues, which is one of the reasons why.
So maybe he wasn't telling her about me to protect her in his mind. No?
So, so I think he wasn't telling her just because he'd never told her. Like, why would I do it now?
He probably didn't tell anybody.
You're never coming out of the woodwork. You're never going to find anybody. You're never going to show up at the door. Like, how would you? So
cars, planes, trains.
I'm actually not showing up at the door.
Yeah. That's good. That's very self-protective of you and very smart.
Yeah.
And this seems to be the solution that he came up with when all this stuff happened. Like, hey, we're going to protect her from this. We're going to protect her from that. We're never going to tell her the truth. Well, guess what? She's lived with you long enough that she knows you're not telling her something. So now you leave her up to her curiosity and her imagination, which is extremely developed. Extremely. Like, this woman could write books. Like, she's extremely creative. And she always has these crazy ideas. And so just tell her what's going on.
Right.
So he's running to the computer all giddy. And she's thinking, okay, he's having an affair. And then she's like, it starts to bleed into some of her paranoia and starts one of these episodes where she's upset with him. She's chomping at the bit of the restraint that is put on her in the marriage because she's not reliable. Like, somebody has to control the finances or take your keys away or something because you do stuff that puts not only yourself but other people in danger.
But that was one of our biggest fears when we went to contact, because let's admit it, we're just contacting strangers. I mean, we don't even have like friends in common or I met you somewhere, and we changed cards.
You don't know what ball of
you have no idea. And it's
or if the father even knows you exist.
Yeah.
And you're being told they did, but who knows?
We didn't want to blow up anybody's life, but on the other hand, it's like it has been.
Your life only blows up if you let it. You're out there, you exist.
Yeah.
So who is it helping to not tell the truth?
Right. Mm-hmm.
Not telling your spouse, not telling.
Time.
Yeah.
And honestly, when our father is saying to the family, I've done terrible things, and he finally comes out to tell them what that terrible thing is, Laura's husband, go ahead, Laura.
It's freaking hysterical.
So Chris automatically thought that he had hit somebody with his car.
So he said, I did very bad things as a young man. You don't need to know. So I've been hearing that since I was little. And I thought, honestly, I wouldn't know. And I'm thinking partying, drinking, maybe womanizing, probably. Like, he's probably sleeping around. Who cares? I watch enough HBO. So then I get a phone call when I'm in my house with my little kid, and I get a phone call that says from my sister, and she's like, so stuff's going down at the farm. I wanted to call you and let you know that Dad just came to me and told me that he thinks he has a kid. And I'm like, a kid? Like, I'm like, older than us or younger than us? Because those are two very different things.
Oh, yeah.
And I secretly hoped it was younger than us, because that would be pretty amazing. But that would just really blow everything up. And Eva goes, older than us. Eva, she's like, older than us. Before he ever met Mom. And I was like, oh, okay. Okay, so this person found it through like the DNA test, which had been prevalent for about 5 years at that point. Okay. And she's like, he's gonna call you. You have to pretend that I did not call you and tell you first. I'm like, okay. And she's like, I just wanted to get a heads up so you can wrap your mind around it, but it's his secret to tell. And then when she said that, I was like, oh my God. Last week, the week before, when Mom was having an episode and she was freaking out about this and that and the other thing. So this is what she did, Sherri. This is what she did. She drove by my house. I live 2 hours away, and took a bag of items that she found at yard sales, tied up in a black trash bag, and threw them over my fence into my backyard. Never told me. So here's 2 trash bags in my backyard. She attempted to have a used piano delivered to my house. I don't want a piano.
Because I teach piano. And John
take that out of the equation, because I don't know what's triggering it. This is just the stuff that's happening in this episode. Yep. She's not speaking to him, and will occasionally spend a couple of days at a hotel away and then come back, which freaks me out, because if you're not in your right mind to make good decisions and you're driving a car, you're going to kill somebody, which I did at one point explain to the police during one of these episodes. And they said that they could not get her to come in or do a mental health check at an emergency room or anything if she wouldn't willingly come along with them. So here she is, gone for 2 weeks. Nobody knows where she is. And she's driving a vehicle around. And that's freaking terrifying. So she throws the garbage bags into my backyard. Doesn't tell me that she did that. She tries to deliver a piano. I tell her many times on the phone, I do not want a piano. She's like, no. Like, it's for your daughter. Like, we have a musical inclination in this family. Like, she needs to start doing piano lessons. I'm like, no. Giant, like, the number one thing that I see in dumpsters around here when people move out, pianos. It's like, no, I don't want a piano. And I said, okay, how about a keyboard? No. So she calls me several times, and I'm trying to talk to her, because I'm also hearing it from my sister, who's like, stuff's going on.
So it's like watching the trees build online for these people, and then talking to some of them. And it's like, oh, yeah, I guess that does have to happen a lot in families. This branch goes off this way. This branch goes off that way.
They don't even know you're related.
That's how the core family kind of spreads, but falls apart at the same time.
Well, that was my biological mother's first thought when I approached her, was, I don't really know my father's side of the family, so I don't know what I have to offer you, before she realized I was her biological daughter. And then it changed. But yeah, I think it happens in more often than we would like for it to happen. But, if you hadn't have replied and you hadn't have been open to at least giving me a chance, I would have never known any of this. And at this point, sometimes I sit there and listen, and I forget that your mom's not my mom, just because I know her story so well at this point.
Your mom sounds lovely.
My mom is
Your
lovely.
mom sounds like a classy, supportive, nurturing lady.
Yes. So we get to go forward from here. And I want to thank you so much for coming on and sharing your story, Laura.
Oh, thank you.
My sister. And Trish, you want to take it from there?
Absolutely. Thanks everybody for watching and or listening. And if you enjoyed the episode, be sure to subscribe and share it with somebody who might need a little hope today, or who might have a similar situation or know somebody who does. So until next time, we're Trish and Sherri, and this is Found with the Trish and Sherri, the podcast. Thanks.